first to order. Roll call, please.
President Jay Lundfeld.
Here.
Trustee Judy Kettleholder.
Here.
Commissioner Todd Quick.
Yes.
Commissioner Randy Case.
I'm here.
And Trustee Kevin Lucius.
Here.
And Commissioner Eric Kedrick on Zoom.
Here.
All right, if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're at public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone to address the Plan Commission on any issue. Please observe the time limit of 3 minutes. While the Plan Commission encourages input from residents, it may not discuss or act on any issue that is not duly noticed on the agenda.
We do have one pre-registration from Michael Komkowski in regards to Creek Crossing final plat and 3047 Melody Parkway.
All right, go ahead, Michael.
Okay. I just came to speak about two issues that I would like you guys to consider when reviewing the final plat for this development. First one being the traffic circle that's going to be put at the end of Laufenberg. That traffic circle inside of the documentation tonight said that it's going to either be paver stone or colored concrete. My concern with that is that this is a perfect area to rip that out and put some vegetation in there. We always talk about reducing the amount of impervious surface in the village. This is a fantastic place to do that. The concrete out there is just going to be concrete. If you put grass there, they're already mowing down Laufenberg inside of the swales, or you could even plant prairie grass there if you wanted to, help out your pollinators and other insects in the area. From a sustainability point of view, the committee is looking, as we put together our plan, one of the things that I've been noticing often is an idea of no-mow right-of-ways, as long as it doesn't influence sight lines. A lot of places are planting prairie grass in their right-of-ways to encourage insect populations. The second issue that I'd like to raise with you tonight is the 2-foot gravel shoulder that is planned down Laufenberg and up Conrad Drive. On the side of the road, you're going to have your ribbon curb, and then there's 2 feet of gravel on either side of the road that functions as a gravel shoulder. That was put in, I believe, because it's going to be a ribbon curb, so people go off the road, they aren't in grass, or for snow plowing. This gravel, I think, is going to be an issue long term. One, it's going to migrate into the street, which could cause difficulties for drivers. 2, it's going to migrate into the swale, which is going to cause issues for the homeowner. The homeowner has to mow this swale, and that gravel is going to be an issue, and possibly, if we're going to continue, if it's going to be replaced, it might have to be replaced, which is an additional maintenance cost. I don't think that it really serves any purposes. Down the center of Laufenberg, you have ribbon curb, but you do not have any gravel that functions as a shoulder there. Also, I'd like to read a section from section 6109, which is the Public Facilities Ordinance, Code of Ordinances. Inside of this is the section that deals with terraced areas. The term terrace shall be defined as the land between the edge of the pavement and the edge of the property. The terrace shall be kept free and clear of all noxious weeds and shall not be paved, surfaced, or covered with any material that shall prevent the growth of grass and shall be maintained as a lawn. I think that this gravel does not fit maintaining with, shall be maintained as a lawn in the terraced area. I thank you for your time, and I hope you consider these 2 things when you are deciding on the final plat tonight.
Thank you, Michael. All right, anybody on,
We don't have any other pre-registrations, and I do not see any hands up to speak for public comment. And then I just want to make a note that Commissioner Cliff Stander has joined us.
all right, thank you. All right, general business, approval of the minutes from February 1, 2021 Plan Commission meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the February 1st, 2021 Plan Commission meeting. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. So moved. Number 2, discussion and possible action regarding creek crossing at St. Francis final plat. We will go, I think, if you're looking, you separated A through D, you want to do each one individually, I think?
Yeah, I can give a quick summary here in regards to the submittal. And then we can go through each of them. As part of your packet, Brian and staff, we did provide a list of items that do need to be addressed. But we did find that the final plan was substantially in conformance with the preliminary plan. That being said, items A through C there, 2A through 2C, I just want to make sure here on the agenda is a variance. However, in speaking with our village attorney, I believe those are instead waivers. And so our code doesn't differentiate between the two, but my understanding there may be some connotation in regards to that. So the preliminary plat has been submitted for staff review. We've had an opportunity at the staff level to review the items, both the preliminary plat and the other submittal documents, including the developer's agreement and the construction plans and utility plans. And as part of your packet, you'll see a list of the recommended conditions or changes that the staff that we recommend that be fixed before the approval at the village board level. We can go through those. I do have a site plan and construction plans here for reference if any members of the planning commission would like to take a look at the item in detail. In regards to the waivers here, the first waiver is adjusting section 83.19B to change the rate of infiltration from 100% to 90%. Yeah, this was discussed in previous developments and previous meetings. I believe that our code currently requires 100% and the state limit is 90%. In regards to 2B and the waiver from section or subsection 83.83C is in regards to waiving the minimum lot width and the minimum lot area to meet the requirements of chapter 84. So our subdivision code requires 90,100 square feet for minimum lot area, and it requires for the minimum lot width to be 80 feet wide at the building. And so some of the lots on the plat do not meet those standards. However, those standards do meet the village's zoning code in the residential 5 district. Item 2C here is in regards to the minimum right-of-way width for Angeles Way. This is the section that goes southern. And the minimum requirement in the subdivision ordinance is 66 feet. The proposed right-of-way here is 60 feet. So these items are reflected in the preliminary plat and are reflected in the final plat. The village plan commission and village board have not taken official action on these items at this point.
All right, we'll do one at a time. We'll do 2A. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion to approve 2A, the variance from section 83.19, adjusting minimum rate of infiltration to 90%.
All right, can we use waivers? They want us to use waivers. Is there,
Okay.
is that all right?
Yeah, that's an acceptable.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
We told in the last presentation that they were able to meet, just barely meet, but were able to meet the 100% infiltration.
No, they were made 90. They were at 91 or 90.
So
By law, we can't require 100% anymore.
Well, I'm less concerned about the law with what the subdivision can, or what the division can actually do. But if they only made a commitment of 91%, then okay.
Any other? All right, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner DeQuay,
Yes.
Commissioner Case,
Yes.
Commissioner Zander,
Yes.
Trustee Lucius. Yes. Commissioner Padra,
Yes.
The chair also said yes. 2B, we have a motion to have a waiver, waiving the minimum lot width and minimum lot area to meet the requirements of chapter 84 for the specific zoning district. I will make a motion to approve waiving a minimum lot width and minimum lot area to meet the requirements of chapter 84 and the zoning district. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, we're at discussion. I think we wanted smaller lots so people could put smaller houses on so they're more affordable. I think this fits right into our plan of getting some housing diversity. Anybody else?
How many lots are actually affected here? That is, how many lots don't meet the requirement?
Yeah, so there are several of them. I can't tell you exactly how many, but the standard lots here, as you can see, anything under 9,600 will not meet that requirement. Well, it's like lots 10 through 19, or 10 through 20. Lots 38,
It looks like it's almost 90% of them.
yeah.
I don't know, can I make a point of order? Can I say something? With what you're saying, Bill, aren't those developments zoned SR5, which that means the minimum frontage is 60 feet, and is the square footage 9,600, or are you using the SR4?
So the subdivision code minimum requirement is 9,600 square feet. And 80 feet at the building. The SR5 district, I believe is 7,200 square feet and 50 feet width.
Oh, so this is falling into chapter 83 is what you're saying?
So this meets the single residential 5 district, but it does not meet the subdivision minimum lot requirements.
Oh, I did, okay. Sorry, I didn't know what, I was just, thank you.
Okay, Judy?
I don't know if I can ask this or not, but I will. Is there any way that we know a rough cost that they're gonna sell the lots for? Like what we think a lot will go for?
Yeah, I don't know. We have Ron Kloss, we have Jeff Lee, and we have Vern Jesse on Zoom here. They may be able to address that question. Jeff or Vern or Ron, go ahead if you would like to address that.
Sure, this is Jeff. We are working through final pricing, but to be consistent with the market on a per square foot basis, these lots are suggesting they'd be priced in the low 90s to low to mid 100s.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Comment?
I don't know if that's classified as affordable, but I guess it's more affordable than the latest one that we just approved.
Yeah, I guess it's all relevant, but I would think with the setbacks and everything that'll be required, that the houses will be smaller. you know, I don't think you're gonna have a 4,000 square foot house put on this lot. It'll probably be more in the 1,200 to 1,700 maybe, 2,000. Which is really where the cost of the housing is. It also provides higher density. We get more people in a smaller area. It's good for the environment.
We do have Mike Slavny, our village planner on here too, and so he's available for any questions also. Wanted to know that.
Anybody have any questions?
I don't object to the smaller lots, maybe this, but is this something that should be looked at in the ordinance? I mean, if we're granting a variance to a lot of lots and, you know, maybe the ordinance ought to be looked at as to whether we're acquiring too much square footage or frontage on
Yeah,
residential lots.
I agree, it's an inconsistency between the subdivision ordinance and the zoning ordinance.
I think that's something we can look at in the future.
In the future.
Yeah. Anybody else? All right, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Kusis,
Yes.
Commissioner Case,
Yes.
Commissioner Sander.
Yes.
But did someone say something?
No.
Commissioner Duquette,
Yes.
Trustee Kettleboard,
Yes.
Commissioner Fedora,
Yes.
President Langfeld.
Yes. All right, we have review and recommendation for a waiver from section 8379 allowing a minimum right-of-way width of Angela's Way to 60 feet.
So this waiver refers to Angeles Way, which is a southerly street on the plat. I believe in previous meetings it was discussed in regards to parking on one side. Because of the way that the plat lays out with the stormwater retainage, or retention pond and the size of the lots, it was suggested that this would be 60-foot right away instead of the minimum 66 as required by the subdivision ordinance. It's been represented in that way, and the no parking is reflected, I believe, in the restricted covenants and or the developer's agreement.
All right, do I have a motion?
I'll move to grant the 60-foot width.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second, open up for discussion. Kevin?
Go ahead.
And then Kevin and then Randy.
Yeah, thanks. Do we determine if there is only going to be parking on one side, do we determine which side? One. Two, this is an awfully curvy road. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of turns in this road. And then, which may require some wider, sight distances as well. And then three, I think is it Brian's summary here called it, what do they call it? Small, intended to be a smaller and quieter street, which it seems like that might be the case now, but we have no idea what lot 56 is going to be. And so I wonder how we can call it quieter and smaller when we don't have knowledge of what 56 will be. And I will only offer up that if we pick one side, it should be the south side, and then require lot 56 to provide for parking if and when it goes to development outside of the street, like either require that parking be made off-road for the residents that are in there.
Randy and myself.
Well, I think that summarizes my concern, so nothing else.
All right, I also agree, and I was even gonna go a step farther to help maintain that. I would like to see eventually when 56, and I don't know if we do it now or later, but have the entrances come to the north of that lot, so they're not gonna be on the road for very long. They would pull right in, off both sides, so they don't go the whole loop. The driveway would be right into that lot, would be right up near the northern part of it. But I don't know if that's something we do now or not, wait until the development comes in.
Yeah, so I would suggest that, it's noted here in the motion, and so if a site plan or a plan development does come for the plan commission, we should do it at that point. And then in regards to the parking on whichever side, we'll just have to we'll need to address that and updating it in the document that it's mentioned in, and then by ordinance, I believe the village has authority to do that.
All right, any other discussion? All right, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Case?
Well, I'm gonna vote yes, but I'm presuming the motion includes parking on the one side only, the south side.
Well, that, I don't,
Or is
right
that-
now, all we're looking at, if you agree with the 60 feet, it's in another document that we'll approve later on, I would imagine.
Well, then I'll vote yes.
Yeah, or the parking can be addressed on ordinance.
Okay.
Commissioner Duquette?
Yes.
Trustee Calhoun?
Yes.
Trustee Lucius?
Yes.
Commissioner Sander?
Yes.
Commissioner Penrith?
Yes.
President Weinfeld?
Yes. All right, you're now at the review and recommendation of creek crossing at St. Francis final plat. And did you want to go through all 28 of those?
I don't believe we have to. Brian Berquist, our village engineer, is here with us tonight. So is Mike Slavny, our village planner. The document, the packet, did include the letter from our village engineer, which is, has been reviewed by staff, and we are in concurrence with that. And so, I do have plans, I do have the plat, and I think the best way to do this probably would be to open it up for questions so that we can get through this in a decent amount of time.
Okay, I guess my whole thing is, I agree with all of these requirements that they're asking here. And I would add to it that, I know they mentioned about the retention pond being wet, but then the DNR was talking about how they want them dry. But if it's going to be wet, and there's a chance of it to be wet, I'd like it to be in the notes like we had on the preliminary plat. And I would like lot 56 to either be labeled or in the notes that it's going to be potentially multifamily. I do not want to run into what we've been running into where we're not clear on these final plots, what we're planning on doing. So let's get it on there so people know when they buy the lots. So those are my three things. Anybody else? Kevin?
This is
This is Kevin. I have the same thing about the lot 56, so thanks for bringing that one up. I wish we could take it further, but I don't want to go backwards here today. I think we have to address it. I don't know if it's also addressed in the covenants, which get handed out to each home buyer, but if not, it should be, as well as the plat map. So a couple of questions. Also, I had the DNR one. There you go. I'll skip some of the other lesser questions. Oh, and I'm going to mention on sheet 3, PDF 8, no construction traffic will be allowed to enter via Laufenberg Boulevard. I just wonder how that's controlled. So that's a question seeking an answer. And I would agree with Michael's assessment about the traffic circle and decorative stone, trying to get something in there that is maybe a little nicer than decorative stone. And I do understand that it may be a hassle, a little bit greater burden to maintain, but I think it's worth it. And then I had a question about some sidewalk connecting. Oh, never mind. I just want to reiterate that connecting the sidewalk. And that's it.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Kevin.
Michael brought up the stone on the terrace.
Could you answer that question, or the first
Yeah.
question?
You want to answer these questions before we move to the next one?
That's fine. I was gonna let them do them all at once.
Oh, all right, sorry.
No, that's all right. Okay, go ahead.
Jay, would you like me to answer that?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ron.
This is Ron Kloss. Yeah, this is Ron Kloss with D'Onofrio's. We're doing the engineering for this project. And the ribbon curb is a different design than what the village has used. And in our discussions with village staff, Jerry Gray and Brian, there was concern that cars, as they parked along the road, would pull off beyond the ribbon curb and into that terrace area, and they would rut it up. So we had proposed a shoulder beyond the ribbon curb to help prevent that rutting. But our intent here is to sprinkle a little bit of topsoil on top of that and grow grass right up to the ribbon curb so that there is no actual gravel showing to or to maintain, but it's there as a base for when cars would pull off beyond that ribbon curb. So that's the basis for that design. On the traffic circle, we're wide open to building that however the village prefers it. So you just let us know. And then as we review Brian's letter and those items, we don't have any problem taking care of those, other than we'd like to discuss that centerline radius on Conrad. We are proposing a 100-foot radius on that curve instead of 150. And the reason we went that direction is, as you look at the outside lots, they're already very deep on that curve. And lot 37 has a decent shape. If we go to a 150-foot radius there, it shifts the street 20 feet in the middle. So it would take a big whack out of 37, and it would make 7, 8, and 9 even deeper and more, I'll say, snouty. You know, they're because those outlines would be extended, especially between 7 and 8. That'd be another 20 feet long. So, and we look at speeds here. To me, this is really no cut-through traffic, very low speed. So we'd like the village to consider a variance on that. And by the way, this is not a change from the preliminary plat, but now is the time to analyze it and decide.
All right. Did that answer your question, Scott?
No.
Which one do you get?
Construction traffic not coming in Laufenburg.
How are you going to control the traffic from
I
now?
think I could cover that one.
Okay.
What we had anticipated there is that there would simply be barricades brought across the entire stretch during construction to prohibit errant deliveries or the random truck driver from using that. The intention of the comment was more to not put a stone tracking pad there, which would further differentiate that from an actual entrance. So that was the intention. There would actually be barricades placed there and not have a stone tracking pad, which you would normally see at a site entrance.
Okay, thanks. I guess then I misinterpret, I mean, this is construction during
That's a real good idea, Brian.
development, Brian, you're talking about, like roads and sewer, and not during home development. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I don't know how you'd prevent it during home construction.
But I was wondering, okay.
infrastructure construction that.
Could we just clarify that it's development of the subdivision and not development of homes? During construction of homes, of the subdivision and not during of homes? Because I think that, I don't know, maybe I'm not the only one that was confused.
Sure.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Todd, go ahead.
Well, there's the gravel on the side of the road. That's what I was asking about.
Oh, okay, so you understand.
If it's gonna be covered with dirt, and we're assuming the homeowner will try to keep it up.
And I think that's a good idea. I think we get a lot of calls if there's a lot of ruts in people's yards there. They have to fill them in, so. All right, any other questions on this? Hey, I guess Jeff, Ron, so I just want to make sure when this comes to the board, all these points will be added. This will be all modified, so we aren't having a million contingencies. That's 3 weeks from now.
Yes, Jay, that is our plan, and we also plan to incorporate the desires we learned from the DNR on the stormwater ponds. We hope to have those incorporated in the plans as well by the village board. Again, the only item that remains in our minds is this radius question. And since that is not a departure from the preliminary plat, is this something that the plan commission should discuss? Should we work through it with staff? What's your desire on the radius question?
Well, that's good, because if that's what we're left with, I think I'll just go around and see what people's feelings are on it. So we have some idea. Everybody's, Jeff? I mean, Kevin?
Yeah, I leave it to engineers, really. I'm having a hard time trying to decipher what it would look like live, other than my hope is that it would possibly keep people moving slowly. And then secondly, I think is on that, I remember what lot it was on the corner, inside corner there, that line be some sort of restriction against putting up trees or any other obstructions in that inside corner. So you could see around it. We don't have to deal with what we're dealing with over here on.
Yeah, lot 37.
Lot 37, thank you. So I don't know what that dashed line means, but it seems like that could be similar to a no tree, no structure type zone.
Yeah, that dashed line is it's just a geometry feature called a chord that connects the two ends of the radius. But to your point, the village does have a vision requirement at all street corners already. That is an excellent point. It needs to be kept at the forefront, but you already have, I shouldn't say vision corner, you have planting requirements on corners as well in your code. But we can certainly add that on the plat too, as Bill is showing it right here.
All right, Cliff?
My concern would be then whether or not like emergency vehicles, if there is parking on one side of the street, that if in fact a case happened where one of the larger fire trucks or pieces of equipment they need to get into that area, is that a concern? And I would want someone from the village to acknowledge whether it's safe or not.
Right.
But we're only looking at parking on one side of the street on Angeles. That's Conrad.
Oh, they're
Technically,
so that, okay.
that technically could have two cars on the sides of the street.
Well, technically it's a corner, you have to be 20 feet from each corner. Okay. But anyway, that's a different story. I think what Cliff is looking at, the road is still 66 feet, it's just, you're talking about kind of truck.
A sharper radius.
Yeah. All right, I don't know, we'll have to check into that, that's a good one. Randy?
I'm all right with the 100 foot. I like the idea that it might slow the traffic somewhat, which has been an issue we've talked about. And so I can live with the curve, although I think the idea about the emergency vehicles is a good point.
Todd?
I'm fine with it. It'll slow them down.
All right. Judy?
I'm good with it, slow it down, but that's a great point. That's a great point.
Well, it looks like, I'm agreeing with everybody. As long as, emergency vehicles, especially fire trucks, can make that curve, it sounds like we're pretty much okay with that. So, I don't know who actually makes that call, Bill?
Yeah, so the process for a waiver does require, from the subdivision ordinance, does require a motion by the planning commission recommending it to the village board.
Right, but I don't want to recommend it until we know, I guess we could do a contingency, but is it, who actually can make that determination? That would be an engineer, right?
Yeah, we had an engineer and or also the fire department.
We have seen in other communities where their minimum radius is 100 feet and in Dane County. So it was more to call that to the Plan Commission's attention that that's what your ordinance says. But we do work in other communities that allow 100-foot radii, and it does work with emergency vehicles.
That answers that, thank you. So I guess we could do I have a motion to do a waiver on this?
Also move.
All right, we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second, any discussion? All right, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Padre?
Yes.
Eric, did you have any questions or comments?
I do not. I don't have an opinion.
Commissioner Zander?
Yes.
Trustee Lucius?
Yes.
Trustee Campbell?
Yes.
Commissioner DeQuinn?
Yes.
Commissioner Case?
Yes.
President Longo?
Yes, and sorry about not hitting you, Eric.
That's okay. I had nothing to add.
All right, is there anything else we need to, Jeff and Ron, you're gonna do something with lot 56 with either putting it on the plat or doing a note?
The plat already calls it out as being likely 8 unit per acre density, but if we want to add additional comments, we can.
Okay, are those comments in one of the other documents, or is it gonna be a note on the final plat?
At this point, it's a note on the final plat.
Oh. Okay, that's good. I couldn't find it on it, but I might be missing it. But okay, very good. As long as it's somewhere on there that we can point to in the future that that's what it was gonna be.
Bill, can you, I know it's a comment on the preliminary plat. I assume it's followed through into the final plat, but we will make sure it's on there.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see it on the final plat. There's a couple more notes that weren't followed through on the final. So we can work with that.
All right, Bill, is there anything else we need to do here or anything else you need?
No, I think that answers all of our questions. And so, the action that we'll need from the planning commission will be to recommend it with these fixes.
All right, do we have a motion?
Also move.
Second.
All right, I have a motion. I'm just gonna say what the motion is. To recommend approval of creek crossing at St. Francis final plat with all the stated additions added. Is that
Addition,
I guess it's my motion, so I can comment.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that, I mean, there were a lot of issues that Town and Country Engineering found, and I guess I'm presuming they're all addressed. So my approval on this is that those, in fact, are taken care of.
Yeah, so what we're gonna do here, is if it is recommended by the planning commission, work with the developers and get it on to the final plat before it's presented to the village board. We would not present the final plat to the village board unless these items are in there.
All right, I just want, because the recommend of the final plat that we have, those are not on it. So I just want to make sure that they're gonna be on it.
Yeah. Well, I agree.
All right, so a motion and second, any other discussion on it?
Did we address Mike's first point about the traffic circle planting, or did I just miss that somehow?
Yeah, I believe Ron Cost responded that, you know, they go any way that we would require them to. So there's something on that.
Is that what,
Well, I was asking that you don't pave it or put paver stones in it, and that you leave the center open so that low or no maintenance vegetation could grow in there, was my request for the center of the traffic circle.
I think we're kind of getting deep into the weeds, because I thought we pulled this out of, quote, the final plat, the circle. I thought that was an item, an individual item, you know? I know we talked about it at one time, it's not part of that, the development, they're just gonna do it.
Yeah, so the construction, the circle itself does not be part of the final plan. It's part of the design plan.
Okay.
Need to differentiate between the two. In regards to the plans, and Brian can step in on here, but, you know, we're pretty close in those things, the items in the street and utility plans, can change and have in the past changed, because of items that we don't foresee, and if they are large, policy decisions to be made, we'll bring the final, one of the street plans and construction plans for review. But whether it's pavers in the circle or whether it's grass in the circle, that's something that we can make a determination.
Right, I'm trying to keep this clean, so right now, we're just talking about the final plot.
okay,
That's something outside of that, I don't want to confuse things here.
okay.
Okay.
I was just confused because it was on the construction drawing inside the.
Right. No, we can bring it up, I'm just saying, right now, what we have in front of us is the final plot. So we don't have to deal with that right now with this.
Well, I'm sorry to get it messy, but I do want some clarification, because we pass it with all the recommendations in Brian's letter. Brian's letter specifically states traffic circle and trail be either decorative stone, pavers, or colored concrete. That is in his recommendation. So we're saying if the final plat passes, as long as they make the recommended changes, that's one of the recommended changes.
Yeah,
Well, that's not how I'm reading. The only thing that's from there are things that are tied to the final plat.
Okay.
My understanding, the circle is outside the final plat. It's not a part of the development. The developer is going to do something with that.
Okay, because it's in the engineering plans. Got it.
Yeah. Okay. That's how my understanding, because that's how we did it when we talked about it the first time. But I just want to make sure I'm correct on that, correct, Bill? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Everybody comfortable?
Yeah, so it'll be.
All right, roll call vote.
Commissioner Duquette,
Yes.
Commissioner Case,
Yes.
Commissioner Xander,
Yes.
Trustee Lucius,
Yes.
Trustee Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner Kedrow,
Yes.
and President Langill.
Yes. All right, thank you very much. We are going on to number 3. Discussion and possible action regarding 21 American Legion Drive concept redevelopment plan.
Want me to provide a presentation on this first?
Sure.
So this is a project located at 2100 American Legion Drive, on the corner with Main Street here in Cross Plains. Property owner is Tom and Robin Rockus. They are here also with us on Zoom meeting. They have proposed a redevelopment for this property. The very top floor, is the second floor, would be Airbnb type setting where they would rent out to up to 6 people. Main floor would be an entertainment space or assembly space intended to fit up to 99 people. I think there's in the middle. And then on the lower floor would be a separate entrance and also in the back be connected to, or can access upper levels, and for the lower floor would be a business. They are also proposing a 10 by 25 foot deck over the lawn area that faces American Legion Drive as part of their entertainment space. As part of the packet, you do have the site plan and floor plans for each of the floors. This first one is the main floor, excuse me, the first one is the top floor, and you can see bedrooms and studio space. The second drawing here would be the main floor with assembly space, bathrooms, and the deck. And then the lower floor would be for the business and storage. When this plan was reviewed, or this concept was reviewed by staff, generally it would fit the Main Street business and architecture. However, there were questions in regards to parking and being able to access the site. You'll see here that property owner has submitted two concepts for parking arrangements on the private property itself. And so I'll let Tom and or Robin take it from here and provide where they are at with this, and then the planning commission can take it from there. Tom or Robin, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, we can have you get started here.
Sure, yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Tom. Robin Crackus over here to my right. Bill summed it up pretty well. I specifically, well, we would just mention parking. I did give two options because one is if we are required to back up to do a U-turn in the property. As she's showing here, this would somehow, the architect said that this would be, yep, a Y-turn type exit. And then the other one would shows kind of like how the building has been used, where people just back out. And then it would give us an option to use this patio area here, which we would hope to do. So we were hoping to be able to use this version because it seems it would just be more appropriate. The other version would have one space with one ADA compliant space, so that kind of leaves us with one space. So we might just waive that if we're stuck with that, waive parking. But I'm not sure what else, if anyone had any questions or what you were hoping me to address, Bill.
Sure. Mike Slavy is also on the line here. Mike and Jerry Gray, our director of public facilities, Brian Berquist, our village engineer, in regards to concerns with parking in this area. This does get congested. American Legion Drive is one way through this section here, going from south to north. And then 1909, which is right next door too. So we have heard in the past complaints about the traffic congestion here in Inland of parking spaces. I guess the big concern here is as an assembly space of up to 99 people, plus your Airbnb of additional 6. Question becomes where do they park?
Sure. We have thought about this quite a bit. So it's up to 99 people. That doesn't mean that our events will regularly have 99 people. We're going to be starting out with smaller events, and if we were to have, let's say, maximum capacity for a wedding or whatnot, we would encourage our clients to use a shuttle from, say, a hotel in the business park there in Greenway, and then have them shuttled to the event. I did drive around recently and kind of eyeball all the parking spaces around the memorial, the Veterans Memorial, and just the streets in general. And it seemed like there was quite a bit of parking actually. So I was kind of relieved to make that assessment. Yeah, so we're concerned about parking for the bigger events, but I think that we're still going to be okay, and with weddings and whatnot, I think we would be utilizing shuttles and other creative ways of getting people there, so they won't be, bothered by not finding parking. Even though I think that there would be, I think there's enough parking, honestly, for me to walk. I can't speak for everyone else that might want to walk from the back end of the Veterans Memorial. But I think there's quite a bit of parking up and around that area.
Okay, does anybody have any questions?
How much parking would be required by ordinance for this use?
So in a mainstream mixed use district for which this property is in, it does not require any off-street parking. Off-street parking is waived. The proposal for this development would be coming in as a planned development, which would require zoning amendment with the mainstream mixed use as the base zoning for that.
All right, Judy?
Personally, I thought the same thing when the wine bar went in there. They didn't have a lot of parking either, but people find it. People walk, people get there, and they do great. So I feel like this is kind of the same thing. If we did it for them. This is just across the street.
I guess I got a couple comments on the parking. What I guess I would do is reach out to the Legion post there. And when you have events, maybe have a deal where people can park in their parking lot, because like you say, it's only about a block and a half. So that would be something that you might want to do, is work out a deal with them. That would give you probably 20 spots or more. And then the other is in your, for the top floor, in your letter, you have it as bed and breakfast, and then in the memo it was an Airbnb. And I thought at our last time we talked about this, that if you classify it as a bed and breakfast, you actually have to serve the breakfast part. And I know there's restrictions on how many days for an Airbnb. And I think your concept is great for short-term rental. I'm just not sure why we're not going with something like that unless something has changed in there. Just wanted to kind of clarify so you don't get stuck on something like this.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We did go over that, and that's not the most updated version of the document, but we have the most updated version does refer to it as a short-term rental, like a vacation rental house or an Airbnb.
Oh.
So yeah, we won't be pursuing the bed and breakfast.
All right, very good.
So I want to add a couple comments here. So once it does get past the conceptual stage, that would be required to submit an application which would verify exactly what they desire to do on the property.
Right, I just wanted to make sure they look at it and it fits their business model, that's all. So they're not coming back another time. All right, Kelvin?
Yeah, I just lost it. Regarding the on-site parking, I guess I don't have a real strong desire for either. I don't really have a problem with backing out onto Main Street. I mean, there is some congestion there. It's not a one-way, it's a two-way street, but there's no access out to Main Street. And so you get a lot of people turning around, going back out. And the good thing is most people are moving pretty slow, but the people can come whipping around American Legion. I know that firsthand. I live there. So I guess I don't have a big concern about it, but I think that's something that should be looked at a little bit more in more detail. And then about off-street parking, we've had this problem many times, and it's going to continue to be a problem. And I guess I'm taking this opportunity to again encourage the village to look at parking options downtown, period, that can satisfy our business community that's starting to grow a little bit in this area. And if parking becomes more and more of a problem, and there's another business, well, I think somebody might say no thanks. So I suggest beyond this property, we look at off-street parking.
Any other comments?
I like this idea and this concept and this use, and repurposing of the building sounds great. The parking is an issue, and I certainly agree with Kevin that there needs to be some additional thought to off-street parking on this part of Main Street in general. I don't know, I don't have a recommendation on that, but that's been a long-term issue for this village.
All right, Bill?
Can we have Jerry Gray, our public facilities director, and Brian Berquist and Mike in regards to backing out versus doing a wide turn there?
That's fine. Okay, go ahead.
Hey, Jerry, Brian, or Mike, do you have any comments in regards to cars backing out or doing a wide turn in that parking lot?
Well, this is Mike. I've never encountered a car backing out of that site, and I would defer to people with more experience driving in the village to know whether the historic pattern of backing out is dangerous, or is it so infrequent, and the fact that this is a one-way street, does that mitigate the safety of the backing movement?
I guess I'm gonna comment, we have lots of people who back out onto like Church Street and other streets that have far more traffic than this road. While it's, you can only go from Highway 14 to Park Street. You can't go from Park Street on American Legion onto 14. So you've cut almost all your traffic. Really, the only people who turn there a lot of times are the ones that are going to the post office, because they can get in there. So I think the traffic is extremely minimal there. So, I mean, backing up is always more unsafe than coming out forward. So that's a given. The question is balancing the positive of having the parking spots and backing out versus having half as many and going with a wide turn. Okay, I guess we got Jerry and then Brian and then Kevin.
I'll go next. I don't really see a big problem with the backing out. Traffic, although we've seen an increase, daytime hours, it's relative to the post office with the packages they're handling. Evenings, with the neighbor across the street in business now, there's more vehicles traveling through there, also more vehicles parking, but the speed I don't think is going to be enough. I'm not saying there couldn't possibly be a fender bender, but I don't think anybody's going to get hurt too bad at 0.2 miles an hour. But I would like to mention that I do agree with Kevin. I think we need to explore some additional parking in the area. Closer the better. I find that it's human nature. People don't like to walk too far from their car to the front door of a business.
I don't have anything to add on the parking. I agree. I don't think it would be in sufficient volume or speeds to cause significant problems.
Okay, thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, I was just going to point out it's three spots too. So, and presumably restricted to maybe whoever is staying there, or somehow restricted. So I think the traffic is infrequently going to be backing out of there.
All right, so what action do we need since it's only conceptual?
Comment?
Yeah. Go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, I just think this is kind of an exciting thing to have another one of the old historic buildings on Main Street get some time and effort put into it. And I'm glad that Tom and Robin are making the effort to try to get a business going there. As far as our Main Street goes, I think we're gaining a little momentum and starting to have some kind of cool stuff on there. So I, greatly support this project.
Thank you.
So a suggestion would be a recommendation of concept plan with free parking to the middle school.
Okay. Well, we don't have to make a vote on that, do we, or do you want to vote?
Well, it would, taking a vote on it doesn't hurt. I think it would encourage the property owners to move forward with that concept.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
A motion.
All right. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. So moved. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Let's go with conceptual site plan review for 2708 Birchwood Drive swimming pool proposal.
So I will first start off with the location map of this property so that everyone is on the same page. Sorry. So this property is located in the southeast section of the village. And this property is co-zoned, meaning that it's got two different zoning districts for the property. This portion here along here is residential. And this portion is hillside and conservancy. And the whole property has a hilltop overlay on it. There is some significant history in regards to this property in that it was initially, there was an initial developer's agreement in, I believe, 1996. The property actually did not have a home built on it until, I believe, 2014. For that development or the construction of that home, property owner was required to obtain a conditional use permit to construct a residential home. And so you will see here, this is the current site plan, which is hard to see, but this highlight in the purple is the home. This green line is the boundary between the two zoning districts. So everything on the east side of this line is residential, and everything on the left-hand side of that line is conservancy.
Okay, so where's the hilltop overlay? What does that cover?
So the hilltop overlay covers the whole property. The hillside protection preservation line is outside of that area, so that comes along this section here.
Okay.
And so property owner is asking or would like to construct obviously the swimming pool outside of the residential area. In our zoning code, a swimming pool or residential uses, accessory residential uses would not be allowed in the conservancy district. It would be allowed as a permitted use in the residential district. So first and foremost, I think the question here is, whether or not the planning commission and eventually the board would even consider something like this, where the property owner or the applicant would likely need an amendment to the zoning district to make this work, an amendment to the conditional use permit because of the site plan, an amendment to the developer's agreement with the site plan, and then also an amendment to the comprehensive plan, which designates this area strictly as represented by the zoning district of the zoning map. We do have a property owner here, Nick Hughes, and then we also have Mike Slavny that can talk a little bit more about the zoning. The villages, or the staff, my recommendation, because this map is rather old and because time changes and things change, we'd like to really identify what exactly is hillside and what is not in the current state to make a better assessment of whether or not that swimming pool can be located outside of a residential district and whether or not a rezone would be proper in this situation.
Can I just ask the landowner one question? I guess I'm wondering why the pool couldn't go to, I'm not sure if that would be, I would call the south corner. Yeah, right in there. Is that where your septic or something is? I mean, from what it looks like there's room there.
So there is, the area that we are attempting to do it, that's actually quite a significant hill leading down from the house there and would require a rather large retaining wall and a smaller pool. Where you see the play set, the actual line kind of cuts through the yard there, so it would actually need to be up by the house and would require like 4 or 5 or 3 tiers of retaining walls, I believe. So the hope was to find a more level area that wouldn't require as much disruption to the landscape.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the?
Hey, Todd. I don't have a pool, never have, but my understanding is we have to worry about rain and the chlorine runoff when the pool get over full. Is there a plan on how to handle that in what is technically conservancy land?
We are still in the initial phase of actually getting drawings from a pool company, but the ideal would be to have a standpipe that would allow us to kind of pipe it back into a lower infill area, or we would just be using a normal pond drainage pump to do that. There's significant area space available that doesn't flow downhill on the hilltop that would allow normal like soil filtration through topsoil if needed.
And I want to note that because of the requirement as a hilltop development and the hillside hilltop overlay, it does require an erosion control plan and stormwater management plan.
I'm more worried about the chlorine itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, the chlorine itself too is actually going to be a much lower concentration because it would be a saltwater pool. So it's not going to be your typical commercial pool with really high levels of chlorine. It's going to be using a chlorine generator, and so those levels are going to maintain a lower ppm than normal.
Kevin?
Yes, it's Kevin. A bunch of, Bill laid out about 5, 6 plans that would have to be amended. And I also note that the light green line that's supposed to be the existing setback does not match our comp plan map. The shape is different there for the residential area. I guess I'm wondering which one is correct. But before I get an answer to that, I guess a couple other things. I think the village made a mistake in '96 when they allowed for the construction of the home at the time, and in 2014 for the conditional use permit. And I feel like we're really trying to bend over backwards to put a round hole in a square hanging around hole. And I don't get it. I understand that the cost would be exceptional to put it up in the existing green area, but I think the cost to go through these 6 different plans in the process may be more in the end than a retaining wall. But regardless, I am not at all in support of putting this in the conservation zone.
All right, anybody else?
I guess I would just add a comment that I was on the plan committee when this was approved. It took a lot of time and energy. This whole thing was a compromise that needed to be used to address this difficult and unusual property of the village. I do have to say there was a lot of time and effort put into identifying what would be the residential zone and what would be the conservancy zone. So I am inclined to agree with Kevin that unless there's a really good reason to modify this, it just seems like the construction should stick to the residential zone. It's not, I'm not saying that I couldn't approve something else, but a lot of effort went into identifying the residential and conservancy zones, and that was a compromise. And maybe that's got to be lived with.
Okay. Anybody else? Eric, I can't see if you have a comment or.
I do not.
Okay. This is just a review process. I guess it's really up to the landowner. I don't know how much more money you want to put into this. Is there anything else you're looking at? It looks like it's probably lukewarm from the committee going forward with this, and I'm going to agree with Kevin. I think you're going to be surprised how expensive it would be to bring all this stuff into compliance or at least update it. But I could be wrong on that, but generally there's quite a bit of cost to something like this.
Yeah, I suppose it all, it hinges on the planning commission and the village board. And if it's not something that makes sense for either of those bodies, then I understand that.
Is this something, again, we want to vote on?
Well,
It's a conceptual plan, so it's.
Yeah, it's a conceptual plan. I mean, you don't necessarily have to vote on it unless you feel strongly about it. The next kind of official step would be for the property owner to decide whether or not he wants to submit an official application. So he can take the comments that were received today and attempt to submit an application reflecting the current concept plan, or he can make changes and bring it back, or choose not to file an application.
Okay, I guess I'm going to ask the people who did not voice one way, is it that you're neutral on it or what? I mean, I don't want to have him go farther if everybody's here feeling that it's not a good idea. I don't want to waste his time and money. So I guess I'm looking for a little bit more direction. Judy?
I actually would vote for it. I do think I would, as long as he'd come back to us showing that it's not going to hurt. I mean, I would like to see a little bit more detail on it, so I could be voting yes, most likely, if I see if it's not interrupting it too much, and with the salt water that helps and so forth. If I saw a little more, I could be convinced yes.
I would have a hard time with it, even with the salt water. I do know that salt's a problem in our water system and supplies as it is. And we spread too much of it on the streets and sidewalks. It would have to be extremely creative, and I would have to do some more research on saltwater pools for me to change my mind, but I really have a hard time approving it.
Cliff?
I'm kind of mixed up because of the pictures are not really giving me a good view of the landscape as how steep it all is around that area. And it does look like it, that you are trying to push it out and utilize more of the conservancy space than I think than you need to. But like I said, the pictures aren't really giving me a good idea. I could probably be convinced if I could see that it was necessary to go that far. But without knowing that, I'm kind of not in full favor of it.
Okay, thank you. Eric?
I kind of agree. I would like to actually see the land, see the elevations, things like that. But again, putting something like that on a conservancy area doesn't, get me super excited. I could be convinced either way though. I don't have really super strong feelings about it.
And I guess I'm kind of in between. My biggest concern is what precedent this is going to set if we start building into conservancy land. I haven't looked at all our conservancy. Are other people going to also want to move in, or is this a unique situation on the deal that they made when this lot was developed? So those would be the concerns that I would have to try to work through to make sure we're not setting ourselves up. So I guess that's where you heard where everybody's standing. So I don't know how helpful, but I think it gives you some direction.
Okay. Yeah, I think that gives us enough. And Nick, you and I can sit down with the village planner and discussing this more in detail and what it needs for a potential zoning amendment, which would require a 2/3 vote. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to number 5, discussion possible action regarding Eugene Meyer ETJ CMSM review. Do I have a motion? This is the one that's outside the city limit.
I'll motion to approve it.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Let me just get to the page so we all, it's just north of Isabel.
So this property would be just north of the connection between Laufenburg and goes onto Creek Crossing. This is along Stone Valley Road. So
Yeah, Stone Valley comes off
Point.
Point.
Correct, north of Point Road, correct. And so what they are proposing here simply is to create an outlot in what used to be a part of lot number 1 by combining the driveway access to lot number 2.
That was one of my questions. This CSM was previously approved.
It's approved, I believe, my understanding is that it's approved by the town of Derry. We have not seen. Are you talking about the original survey?
Yeah, the original survey.
Yeah.
Because it says, because that was the question, is that they're changing an outlot, but I don't know if it was approved previously by the village or the town.
Yeah,
Without the outlot.
I don't know the answer to that. We would have had, ETJ review of that, and I believe that would have been time.
But it wouldn't have gotten to us unless it went through the town of Berry, right? Because we're just signing off on what the town of Berry has agreed to, because it's not in the village municipality boundaries. This is just extra.
Yeah, I think Kevin's question was in regards to the original subdivision of this.
Yeah, had that been approved previously, I'm wondering.
I
And
think we proved it.
I have no idea.
I don't remember.
Yes, we took action.
Okay, so we're only approving the change, is that right, Mike?
Well, they have the ability to add additional lots as long as they don't do more than 4 in any 5-year period.
But the request here in front of us is really to change an existing circumstance on a CSM, meaning changing part of lot 1 to outlot 1. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay.
And they have the ability to request that change.
Yeah, I guess I'm just not understanding why it needs to be an outlot and it says it's a joint driveway. So but like I say, it's power varies, so, but it's just a little confusing to me.
I believe it was outlot 1 was the original access to what is labeled as lot 1. And rather than have 2 parallel driveways, they can ensure that outlot 1 is not transferred as buildable land to another lot, but this would allow them to have one joint driveway serving both lots. So this has to do with the long-term record keeping about the number of splits and how many additional splits can be done over a period of time. So I believe the purpose of this is to allow for one common driveway rather than requiring 2 parallel driveways.
Okay.
So they did not state this, but if you look at an aerial map of the current property, it does show that the property owner currently has a driveway coming to the property through outlot 1.
And that also shows the existing CSM boundaries.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I needed to know, thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, do I have a motion?
Oh, did you?
Okay.
Commissioner Duquette and Commissioner Case.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say. All right, number 6, discussion and possible action regarding the village street light policy. You want to go ahead, Bill, and just,
Yeah,
and then we have Michael here who is lead on this to answer questions.
So, in discussing streetlights, we have reviewed the village's policy. We didn't have one. The reason why it has come up is because of the subdivision at Scenic Valley, and that we had to make a decision which fixtures the village would like to go forward with, coupled with potentially creek crossing and the Sundance development. There was a desire to have some consistency in a policy for those new streetlights, streetlight poles, and then also for the streetlight poles within the village that potentially could be replaced. And so, in regards to light color, light type, amount of light, design, aesthetics, etc. We did draft the streetlight policy, it was included in your packet. Also included is approved design for the streetlight pole. And so we can take any questions in regards.
Well, why don't we get a motion first and then we'll do that during discussion. I don't want to get confused. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the streetlight policy as presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or discussion?
I have only one,
Randy.
and that is the color. What color? California white, polished.
That's the color of pole you're talking about.
Michael would be able to answer your color question.
It might, I guess, in my comment would be that when I look around at the different poles in the village, the ones that seem to be the most aesthetic are, sort of gray. Or on Main Street, I guess, where this would not apply, there's an exception in the ordinance where they're black. But polished white seems aesthetically obtrusive to me.
Well, they're
That's my
actually
only
concrete, they're concrete poles. If you look at the new developments, that's what they are, those are the poles.
And so they're not like painted. I mean, the California white isn't, and polished.
No, they're concrete poles.
All right, I'm all right with concrete poles.
Right, Michael,
I believe so, because all these concrete poles around the village are, this was the specification that came from Madison that Jerry Brett got when he was ordering the other ones. And if you go to the Meridian neighborhood, that's the exact, it's just, and I saw that too. They're not painted. I think that's just dealing with the polish. I think it's a clear polish on them. It's just the concrete. It's an octagonal pole. It's not, I'm assuming it's not white.
I like concrete and
the cut.
But I just didn't know what polished California white is. Sounds, like the first thing you notice on the street for sure.
They charge more that way.
Yeah, the concrete poles are I think they're designed to last basically forever.
Yeah, I think they look nice, especially with the octagonal cross section.
All right, anybody else have any questions? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. So moved. Thank you, Michael, for sticking around.
Now we know what California white is.
Yeah. All right, so we are on the review of the village zoning. We agreed that we would be dealing with the land use of dwelling units. Yeah, so the only one we're doing tonight is PDF 76. And what the idea is looking at these and seeing if we still need to have conditional use requirements for the ones that have the C. Now, for myself, I thought I understood from Mike last month, but when I got home, I couldn't understand the top line up on top. I don't understand. When I looked at multifamily residential 8, I thought that was an 8-unit apartment, but it's 8 units per acre?
Correct.
Okay. All right, but, okay. So if we can just go down to the townhouse, number 5, where it says townhouse 5 through 8 units, and then it's conditional use. It's conditional use because it's only.
Yeah. So if we look in the line above, if it's a small townhouse building with 3 or 4 units.
Send your message to him.
Sorry about that.
All right.
Line, Mike.
I'm sorry. So let's look at line 5. If it's a small townhouse building with only 3 or 4 units, currently it's permitted by right, but a bigger building, potentially twice as big with 5 to 8 units, would be a conditional use. And we did that for the other forms of multifamily buildings also. A small multiplex, 3 to 4 units permitted by right, and a small apartment building, 3 to 4 units is permitted by right. So we wanted to make it easy in the low density multifamily district to do a small building, but we wanted the ability in some instances to say no, to prohibit the larger building projects. And I think a good example of this would be if the multifamily project let's say, have backed up to single family, you may find it okay to approve a 3 or 4 unit building, but you might want to prohibit a larger 5 to 8 unit building project. So that's why we regulate the larger buildings as conditional uses.
All right, that certainly helps clear it up for me. I just couldn't figure that out. Anything else? Cliff?
So that would be saying like, the project that we went through this morning with that lot 56, if it's multi-unit,
Exactly.
we're keeping the right to restrict the size of that, correct?
Right. That's right.
That's kind of come to us.
Well, it would only have to come to us if it was in the 5 to 8 unit one, right? The 3 to 4, they would be able to do it.
If they had the multifamily zoning in hand, we would review the site plan, but the building size itself would be permitted by right. So you would get a look at the site plan, but there would be no debate if they had the zoning in hand as to whether they could do a 4-unit building or not. If they proposed a 5-unit building or larger, then the plan commission and the village board could say, no, that's too big.
All right, so, but I thought 50, lot, that's a good one that you brought that up. Lot 56, did we do it 8 or 16?
Yes.
Multifamily, we did it what?
I believe we did a 16 on that one.
I thought we did a 16 too.
Okay, I didn't see anything listed on that.
So the only thing that they would have to come to us would be if it was apartments 8 to 16 units, right?
Well, they would have to come to us with a site plan,
Right.
but they wouldn't need permission to do an 8-unit building.
Okay, okay.
All right, unless we remove the C.
Correct. If we change that C to a P, then they don't have to.
That's
Right.
right.
Or remove it. We can't remove it entirely.
Yeah, but why would we want to do that? Then we're saying we'll never want an 8
I
to 16.
don't know, I'm
Yeah.
asking process here, not
Right.
that specific one.
Yeah.
So we have the ability to either change it to a P or remove them.
You and the village board have that ability.
Okay. Are there any questions on this page? Like I say, this is going to be a process, so are there any other questions on this particular page? This is what we agreed we'd be going over. So everybody's comfortable with leaving this one as it is, or are there?
This one to me makes sense.
Yeah.
Further down the line, they don't make sense.
Right,
This
right.
one makes sense.
Yeah, okay, all right.
In my book.
All right, does everybody kind of agree with that, with this one? All right, so the April meeting, we are going to go with the next 2 pages because I don't think we're gonna need to spend a whole lot of time on agriculture or institutional land.
Okay.
Then we'll go to commercial, we'll put those, we'll have that one and then the commercial one, because that's the big one, I think. Yeah.
I think so. Yes, I agree.
I guess I wanna maybe, Jay, ask Mike if, these all make sense to me, but asking him if we're missing something, because I feel like there's so many developments and probably see so many of them that.
Okay, for page 1?
For page 1.
Okay, Mike, do you have any recommendations on what you think we might change on page 1?
On page 1, I want to make sure we're looking at the same thing. So those are the residential dwelling types. Bill has them up on the screen. So I think I want to explain the yellow highlighted ones. I don't know if we've talked about those or not. So that's our community mixed use building zoning district and our Main Street mixed use. So these are the 2 most common commercial districts. And we've got some single family homes and some 2 flats in those districts. And the reason I'm recommending those be a C is, would we want anybody to build a new single family home or a 2 flat in one of those commercial districts if a lot became available. I didn't think so when I put the code. I thought it would depend on maybe where it is, but I thought you would want to maintain control and maybe have the ability to say no if it was a really good commercial site, and we'd kind of be frittering it away on a single family home that could really go anywhere almost in the village. So that was the reason for those two Cs. Are you comfortable with retaining the ability to say no there?
I certainly am.
Yeah. Seems like a good idea.
Otherwise, I think we're fine
Okay,
on this page.
all right, everybody,
I was just gonna ask, I mean, in a community mixed use or Main Street mixed use, is there a desire to keep single family in that district at all?
well, my only concern is we have them there already. And I guess if someone was going to buy one, tear it down and put up a new house, I think they should have that option. I
believe that, hey, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but if it's there already, it would be non-conforming, correct? And
Well, so if there's an existing single family home and let's say it's destroyed by a fire or another natural disaster or by an act of arson, under state law, you have the right to rebuild on the same house. But if you voluntarily took the house down, if that was a blank right now, you wouldn't have the right to rebuild a single family home. So having it as a conditional use gives you the ability, in some instances, you may feel perfectly comfortable with the rebuild, but in other instances, maybe it's a great site for commercial and you want to save it for commercial. So this kind of gives you the ability to make the property owner happy or to insist that now is the time to transition the property to a non-residential use.
But you'd have kind of the conditional use permit process now, you'd have to, I mean, if they were, what was the word, scientifically able to prove that they can have residential there?
Yeah, I think, Bill, I could summon my planning powers and provide you with legal justification to say no.
Okay.
yeah, and see, my concern is you have a house that is deteriorating and someone it's basically looking terrible that no one's gonna want a business next, potentially between two houses, so unless we could clear a block, I think I would like an option to upgrade houses if someone wants to. But at least have that option versus taking it away and saying you can't do it at all.
Just exploring that option.
Yeah, no, it's a good one.
Right, I think a common option nowadays would be somebody wanted to first put an addition with a first floor master suite. And that would, if it stays a conditional use, you would be able to say yes or no on that request.
Okay. I thank you. Anything else on this? So for April, let's plan on the agricultural, institutional, and commercial.
Very good.
All right, thank you. How long do you think it would take you to go through the data that we have here, Bill?
Well, the data that we have, I can fly right through it, but.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and do that? Because this next one is starting looking, we get a lot of people coming in saying this is what the village needs. So what I wanted to do is start sharing some of the information that's out there on the village so we can make our own determinations and look at it, with having some data to back our decisions. So this is just the first session. It's kind of like a training, I guess.
So, yeah, so this is a high level overview of just some trends currently in the market right now and reaction to market conditions. And the data that's provided here is not intended to sway you one way or another, but instead to stimulate some thinking and brainstorming in regards to land use policy, whether it's current or future. So first off here, I linked two studies, one in regards to the COVID economy. David Knapp is perspective in analytics, and so he provides some information in regards to what happened during the pandemic and then coming out of the pandemic. The second one here is done by in regards to a commercial real estate outlook. This is a national outlook, and so it's not particular to our region, but it does reflect what is happening with commercial real estate. These next items here just show it is information from the census and the American Community Surveys. I took it from 2000, 2010, and the current one. This first graph shows the change in household income, and you can see a shift from the middle here to the higher end.
Yeah, question for you?
Yep.
Were those numbers corrected?
Yeah, they were adjusted by inflation.
Okay.
Correct. And so we'll know more when the 2020 census data comes out, where that shift, if it's still in the direction that it shows here or not.
And this is for Cross Plains, right?
This is for Cross Plains.
So I think this is important. If you look, we are becoming more wealthy as the years go on. If you look at the dark lines there.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Well, no, it would make sense because we're building more subdivisions and people moving in to afford those houses have to be also.
Right, but I mean, it's still, I thought it was very interesting.
I think it is interesting.
There's also a website you go on, which is, there's two of them, citydata.com, and then there's another one I can't remember the name of, that we used to use when we did market surveys for putting in stores. And it gives you a really cool look at how things actually rate when you compare us to Marlboro or wherever you want to choose.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah. So then this is just another graph that reflects some more information. This is family income instead of household income. And you can see this similar shift. This next table is in regards to income, householder income compared to age. And so there was some discussion in regards to the need of senior housing. Again, this is not going to answer all the questions, but starts pointing you to what people are spending on rent and housing. Go ahead.
Could you explain this one just a little bit further? I did not understand this one.
Yeah, so this breaks it down by age category. And then, oh, excuse me, this is their income per age. So if they're, say, 25, 44, this is the range of their household income. And then this next table here shows the rent and how much they're spending on rent per the ratio between rent and their income. And so you'll see in regards to senior housing, you'll see, again, this is American Community Survey, so it's not complete, but you can take a look at the ratio, and about 40% are paying 35 or more of their household income. And the age category is 65 years and older. And this is just a map of the current vacant commercial office and retail spaces in the village, listing both currently vacant and on market, or recently vacant and off market. So at one time, these properties have come on for listing, and it shows approximately 40 to 45 square feet, 40 to 45,000 square feet of empty space. And the number of empty lots, as you know, are very limited in crossroads for development. So again, that's the end of my collection of data intended to stimulate discussion around land use policy. Take it from there, Jay.
No, I think you did a great job on this. We're going to continue, and hopefully at every meeting, bring some of this stuff up so we have a better understanding of where the village is at. So when we plan and other businesses come, we have some background on it and direction. That's the whole idea of this, is basically giving a big view of the village. So I think as planned, and that we're going to get more and more power with conditional use, it's important to have this background. So we always want to spend a little time educating ourselves on the village. Kevin?
Thanks, Jay. Yeah. First, thanks for putting the data together, Bill. It's helpful. When you present data like this, I'll ask that. I've done a lot of stats, informing us that it's corrected for town if it wasn't already. And then secondly, comparing it to somewhere else or to some other point in time, whether temporally or spatially, or I guess maybe spatially. So how do we compare to Middleton or Black Earth or some other community that we can relate it to? Because if we're all growing at the same rate or all growing the same way, that's different than if we are growing differently in this rate and differently in that way. Meaning, let's say our income was going way up here, but I don't think this is true, but Middleton maybe was going relatively down. Are we filling a hole? Is there a need beyond just our borders? And so I think that's really important, not just in our isolated community. So that's one thing. And then, I'd like to just talk a little bit more about what they mean. We see the data going up, but what does it mean? And maybe I see Mike's face up there. Maybe he has some experience from other communities how to take these data and then make meaning out of them.
Right. One thing that we've been doing for the last 3 years is there's now a state law requirement that every community with 10,000 people or more has to do an annual housing study. So we've been doing these for communities in Dane County and in a lot of southern Wisconsin communities. We've got a lot of data collected. So in Dane County, Oregon is the smallest community over 10,000 people. So you also have Wanakee and the other cities that are in the county. So there's quite a bit of data available. I think that I tend to look at things, maybe I could offer some kind of planning observations. One thing to think about is residential development can go in many more locations than works for either industrial development or commercial development. Industrial development needs flat land. Commercial development needs traffic. And usually residential development tries to avoid industrial areas or commercial areas. But typically if a site is good for industrial or commercial, at least historically, many communities would not allow only residential projects on those kinds of sites because residential projects have a lot more flexibility about location. A second general trend that I see is in the next 30 years, the big need in America for housing is going to be multifamily housing. And that's because people are living longer in their own homes, but maybe aren't healthy enough to really maintain a single family house, or maybe they just are tired of maintaining a single family house. And then younger people, for all kinds of reasons, have less income and are delaying marriage and delaying kids after getting married. And again, I'm talking about broad trends, but they are not looking for a single family house on average at the same age as, my generation looked for single family houses. So the combination of those two trends is affecting Dane County. The one thing that's a little bit different than about Dane County is we're growing so fast. We often in any given year account for between 20 and 40% of all new housing units in the state, in Dane County. And because of that growth, there still is a great demand for single family homes. But the biggest demand that's growing is in all kinds of multifamily housing. And so odds are that we'll tend to see an increasing demand for apartments and maybe condominiums compared to the past, and maybe a continuation of a strong demand for single family homes, because one thing that's a little different about Cross Plains is that you share the school district with Middleton, and arguably it's the premier school district, at least for young families thinking about having kids or having kids. So I think it's important to keep those kind of facts in mind, and those facts, you really can't look up in data that shows current housing conditions. So keep in mind the very flexible development needs of residential development, and strong single family demand and growing demand for multifamily development.
All right, thank you. Randy?
Just one short question. Put the graph up there again that shows the income, over the last decade. Yeah, these bar graphs. So, this looks to me like, our village is gentrifying is what it looks like to me. But help me tease this out of here. We've got incomes are going up. At the same time, we've built quite a few apartments, which suggest to me that how do you explain that our income is going up and we're still building a lot of apartments?
Randy, I would say that's because a lot of the apartments that have been built are serving by choice renters. So people who can afford to pay a higher rent and want to rent, and they may be people moving down who want to get out of their house and just want to rent. Maybe they're thinking, I'm going to work another few years and then maybe move to where my kids are at, or maybe where I don't have to deal with winter. And then you're looking at young professionals who, again, are delaying marriage and delaying kids, but are pulling in six figures, and they want to rent because they're mobile and they want to stay mobile, and having a house and maybe a lot of possessions isn't that their thing. I have 3 of those right now in my nuclear family, and they don't want things and they like to rent, even though a couple of them could afford to own. And so I think that's another thing that's really changed from when I was 30 years old, 35 years ago, is that now there are a lot of renters who are renting by choice, and a lot of apartment units are being built for those renters. And it might be cheaper month to month to own if you're going to own for 5 years, but these people want to rent. And so I think that can explain how incomes are going up, but also the number of apartments that are being built. It's not 30-year-olds nowadays are not the same kind of values as 30-year-olds when I was 30 years old. So that's one thing I'm still I have to remind myself as a planner that those trends are are big trends and they're happening nationwide. And certainly Dane County is no different than the rest of the country that way.
You have to look, those rents are pretty high. You can actually make a house payment, and I have two sons in the same boat. They are paying incredible amount of rent because they want to be downtown and want to buy scrapers, and they're extremely expensive versus buying a house. They don't want the hassles of the house or being tied down. And I think those rents down on Main Street are right up there.
14 to 16.
Well, this is a little eye-opening for me. And one last corollary question is, does this imply that the village of Cross Plains should be building high-end apartments? I mean, that's not, I'm not in favor of that, not necessarily, but is that what this graph shows, that there's a market demand for, we ought to be building more fancier apartments?
Yeah, I think throughout Dane County, there is an almost insatiable demand for all kinds of housing. And so as a planner, my recommendation to the village would be you have the ability to choose how the village evolves. And one way to let the choice be made for you is to say yes to everything or no to everything. But most communities in a geographic position like Cross Plains, so I work for Mount Horeb, for example. Mount Horeb wants to maintain its single family character, and Mount Horeb wants to remain have a spectrum of affordability that is broad rather than focusing only on high-end stuff. So their comprehensive plan, and therefore a lot of their zoning decisions, is oriented to not changing over historically what they've been. And they're fighting, and Randy, you said gentrification, and that is in fact what is happening. The only communities that don't see that kind of pressure in Dane County are Marshall and maybe arguably Black Earth and Mazomanie. Maybe they are. But every corner of Dane County is getting hit with gentrification. And part of the other trend that we're seeing are dual income households where one person might work at Epic and the other person works in Reedsburg. And Cross Plains is a viable possibility. So those dual income households, is another reason for this insatiable demand in all kinds of communities. So I would encourage the Plan Commission in particular to not necessarily be driven by the trends and trying to accommodate them, but rather what kind of community do you want Cross Plains to evolve? Do you want it to evolve into just a bigger version of what it is now? That's a common choice, and there's nothing wrong with that. Do you want to hit more high-end housing? Do you want to be more accommodating for multifamily housing? Perhaps multifamily if it's in a mixed-use building. But I can tell you that the demand for housing is so high, and particularly in the central part of Dane County, which we're right on the edge of here, and particularly in the Middleton Cross Plains School District, that whatever you decide, there's a good likelihood that you'll be able to attain it. So you've got a choice. I think the question is, do you want to stick with the community kind of with its current profile, or maybe you want to see it evolve? And that's a big picture question for the Plan Commission. And you and the village board in this kind of a community have the ability to stabilize things or encourage change. And very few communities around the country have as big a range of choices as you have because it's such a desirable place to live.
Feeling really special.
Well, it is, and that's, I think, that's why it's important to have this, because I agree exactly what Mike says. That's what we need to do, start looking at the future and seeing what we want Cross Plains to look at. Because you can let the future just come to you, or you can kind of pick a path on how you want to get there. So that's kind of the idea. Well, thank you, Mike, and since the next one's also tied on you, we were looking to start this meeting at 6 o'clock. Is that going to work for you?
Let me take a look here. I think I can do that.
So, do we have, why don't I have someone, we'll keep it on the first Monday of the month, but move it to 6 o'clock. That's what we were gonna.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
So a motion and a second to keep the meeting on the first Monday of the month, but start at 6 o'clock instead of 7 o'clock. Any other discussion?
Good idea.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. So April, we will be at 6 o'clock. Thank you very much.
It won't be an April Fool's joke.
I don't know, is it fall on, is the first Monday in April first?
I motion to adjourn.
All right, thank you. So I have a second.
Second.
All in favor, for any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same. All right.
Seriously, in history of meetings, has anybody ever said no?
None to my.
Well, I don't know. I got one time something that wanted to keep on it.